Good afternoon, everyone. It being 4 p.m., I am going to call the 9th meeting of the Community and Protective Services Committee to order. This is a virtual meeting during the COVID-19 emergency. City Hall is open to the public with reduced capacity and physical distancing requirements. Meetings can be viewed via the live stream on YouTube and on the city website live stream. The City of London is committed to making every effort to provide alternate formats and communication supports for council, standing or advisory committee meetings, and information upon request. To make a request for any city service, please contact accessibility@london.ca or phone 519-661-2489, extension 2425. To make a request specific to this meeting, you can email cpsc@london.ca. Colleagues, I'll start by looking for any disclosures of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, we will move into the agenda items. I am just going to ask, because I believe Councillor Van Holst, from an email, you want 2.1 pulled from the consent agenda. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so we'll have 2.1 pulled. Are there any other items colleagues wish pulled? Seeing none, then can I have a motion to put 2.2, 2.3, and 2.4 of the consent items on the floor? I have Councillor Squire moving, seconded by Councillor Van Holst. Look for any discussion on these items. Councillor Van Holst.
Thank you very much. Just a couple comments then. The the contract award for Skills Advanced Ontario to, I think, Fanshawe College will do a great job for us in that. And thanks again for staffs doing the strategic plan progress variance. Once again, we see the effects of COVID here, but hopefully we'll be able to be beyond that those effects by the end of the year.
Thank you, Councillor Van Holst. Any other questions or comments on the consent items? Okay, seeing none, I'm just going to very quickly comment briefly from the chair, if colleagues will indulge me in that. I want to say, Councillor Van Holst, I agree with you on the Skills Advanced Ontario employment services, and I'm really encouraged to see in here that there's a specific reference to helping incumbent employees with their skills upgrades as well, because I think we often think about moving people into the workforce, but we don't have to, or we don't necessarily always think about helping people stay in the workforce with some skills upgrades. So very encouraged to see that. And I do want to say on 2.4, the capital repair and improvement program, it's great to have our federal and provincial colleagues flowing some money through to help with housing upgrades and repairs for public housing units. And I know particularly for our co-ops in the city, this will be very welcome to allow them to apply for some grant and loan money that will let them improve some of the units in their facilities. So I just want to extend my thanks to Mr. Dickens and his staff in working so hard on that file to get it ready so that money can flow out to some housing providers. Seeing nobody else's hand raised virtually or in real life, I will put this to the vote. And we'll give it just a minute for the clerks to bring it up. Okay, so we'll do the roll call. Councillor Van Holst.
Yes.
Councillor Salee. Councillor Salee, we can see you trying to talk, but I think your mic might be on mute. We couldn't hear you.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, wasn't trying to talk, but are we voting? Sorry, I just missed the first couple minutes there.
Yes, we're just voting on 2.3 to 2.4 on the consent agenda.
Yes.
And Councillor Squire. Yeah. Councillor Hillier. Councillor Hillier has not been able to join us. And Mayor Holder is absent today as well. He sent his regrets. I also vote yes. We'll just ask people to bear with us for a minute here. We're just having a technical issue with the voting system.
Through the chair, apologies for the delay. Closing the vote, the motion carries 4-0.
Thank you, clerk. That means item 2.1 is next for us to deal with. This is the single source procurement vehicle exhaust capture system in City of London fire stations. And Councillor Van Holst, I know you wanted this one pulled, so I will go to you first.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And through you, a couple comments and maybe a motion as well. So I was out today at the fire station #1, looking at this, looking at the Netterman system, which is excellent, very good, high-tech system, and the cost was there. Because we're in a bit of a financial crisis, I did want to look at some others, so I investigated other products like this, and I encountered one that is a much more low-tech, low maintenance system, but it does about 95% of what this high-tech solution does at about 20% of the cost. And so because we're in such a financial crunch, I thought I would like to see the fire department just investigate that. I didn't have a sense when I was talking, when I was talking to Chief Hayes, he said he wasn't aware of that particular one. So I may just have stumbled across something they weren't aware of, but I think it's something that we need to look at, just out of respect for the taxpayers in London. So my suggestion is, and it seemed like it wouldn't be a problem in our discussions, is that we just refer this decision to the next cycle, and that would give our fire department an opportunity to talk to some of the fire departments that are using this system, and have and get a sense of whether that might be appropriate for London, because of course we've got over 30 bays that we need to outfit. And just in my quick calculations, it looks like we might be able to save over, almost $1.5 million in that. So there's my information, and also perhaps my suggestion as a motion. I'll just move that we would refer that to the next cycle. That'll give them opportunity to do a little investigation and decide whether that's a route London might want to move on.
Thank you, Councillor Van Holst. I've got Councillor Salih's hand up there as well. Councillor, I don't know if you were indicating perhaps a second on Councillor Van Holst's suggestion to refer, or whether you had some comments to share, but I'll go to you. And then I think we'll also perhaps ask Ms. Smith to weigh in on what, from a staff perspective, this would mean. But Councillor Salih, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'll wait on the second in the motion. My question was exactly what you were asking, Ms. Smith, to kind of address, is there an issue with the delay? What kind of impact does that have for operations and the safety of our community? And is there, I guess, can you give us a high level kind of approach of how, we typically go out there and try to seek opportunities on this front? Or do we really go far and wide and scan everything, or is this just a one opportunity that just kind of presented itself to the councillor?
Great, thank you. We'll look to Ms. Smith for some comment on this.
Thank you, and through the chair, I'll put my video on so you can see me. So I'll have Acting Chief Hayes follow up if I don't get all the technical aspects fully answered, but so all of our stations except 3 currently use the Netterman system. So we know a couple of our systems are on those 3 are ending almost at the end of their life cycle. So we do have some time, if we can take some time, if the direction of council is to go back and look for a month. I should note that all fire stations except about 3 do use the Netterman system. And so our recommendation was to go forward and negotiate using a sole source for Netterman, because this means we only have to look at the replacements in 3 fire stations versus all of them. But if council directs us to, we can go back at some other opportunities.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. And I'll look to Acting Chief Hayes to see if he has anything that he'd like to add to that.
Thank you. I have no further items to add to that discussion. Ms. Smith did a good job in covering our base there.
Thank you, Acting Chief. Councillor Salee, you have your hand up for, I suspect, a follow-up?
Correct. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess from what I gather is, I guess staff, I know it's a hard question to answer, but even if hypothetically you found another source, and just for those three, would that cost really offset the cost of having to then change all the items at every station, I guess? So are we kind of just going to find, even if we hypothetically find that it's, you know, cheaper somewhere else, it will kind of be almost mute because of the fact that we already have existing product at the other stations. So would we just be kind of, you know, spending staff time and resource in this sense, or is there potentially an opportunity? I'm happy to explore it if there's a potential opportunity for savings across the board on it, but if it's just going to break even for us and just delay things, that's my concern.
So through the chair, thank you. Through the chair, the challenge with this is that each of the systems, the parts aren't compatible. So the challenge we have now with our 3 stations that and trucks that aren't using the Nederman system is that, as you know, sometimes in large fire situations or other opportunities, trucks need to go to different stations. So if you're a truck that does not have the Nederman system on it, you can't go to a Nederman station and hook up. So that's why part of what we're looking for is that consistency across, and why we're suggesting to negotiate with Nederman is because all of our fire stations except 2 stations and 1 bay and a 3rd station are all Nederman. So that means we would only have to replace 2 stations and a bay versus all, and tell me, Acting Chief, I'm correct, I'm still learning, all 14 stations?
14, that's right. 14.
Great, thank you for that. I don't see any other hands up question-wise. Councillor Squire?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, this still isn't clear to me, I have to say. So it's really important to me that I understand clearly what the value would be in putting this off. And I'm having a real challenge, and I'm hoping staff can tell me, is what is the use of putting this decision off if what you're telling us is if we went to something different, we'd have to replace everything in all of the stations rather than just 3, because then obviously there is no real cost benefit. And then the second part, so I still don't completely understand from what you're even saying if that's the case. And I think Councillor Salee also asked that. The second part is, what about this system? I mean, we're proposing to buy something that's cheaper. In my experience, if it's that much cheaper, it's not as good. It doesn't do as much. It's not as sustainable. So you may not know anything about what's been proposed, but I'd like to know that, because it's still not clear to me whether this is just a matter of putting something over and we'll get an answer. If we have an answer now, let's get it.
Ms. Smith?
Thank you. Through the chair, our recommendation is that we negotiate a sole source agreement with Nederman so that we only have to replace our 3 systems. This is the money we have in our life cycle budget, and that is our recommendation. We are not aware of the costs, or on top of that is the annual then maintenance costs of any new systems. Sometimes there could be a difference if it's less expensive on one end. We don't know what the annual maintenance costs, are they less expensive or more expensive than the system we have now? That would be part, if directed by you, the investigation we'd have to do on this matter. But for us, we're recommending that we do a negotiation with Nederman to allow us to put our 2 stations and 1 bay on the same system across the entire city.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, just a comment. I think this raises the challenge when we go out as councillors and find something and say, why don't we do this? I just don't have the expertise to go out and do that and say, you know, oh, why don't we just get this because it's cheaper? So I think it's really important to rely on staff. I'm also, so the number that's over $1 million, I'm not understanding that either, how that savings would be that large. So that would be my last question is it potentially this large a savings over $1 million?
I know Councillor Van Holst has his hand up on this too. Ms. Smith, did you want to chime in on the potential savings before I go to the councillor?
Through the chair, as we are not aware, and I just, as Acting Chief Hayes and I are not aware of this system. We have done our due diligence looking at other systems. We have not looked at this one in particular. And we made our recommendation based on the systems that we looked at in partnership with procurement. So I will leave Councillor Van Holst to speak to the savings. I'm not aware of any.
Thank you. Councillor Van Holst, did you want to come back into the discussion here? You had your hand up, so.
Happy to, Mr. Chair, and through you, of course. I realized, staff, this is something I just saw in our report this past week and looked into it because I was interested, and I again appreciate the opportunity to come for a tour. And we've got a system that functions with exhaust capture on tracks. There is one without, that doesn't use a track, uses a different, a less complicated system that has fewer problems in some cases, and it turned out to be quite a bit less expensive. And when you realize that our systems throughout the fire department will need to be changed over, there'll be that expense for all of those. Mind you, all the whole system doesn't need to be changed over, but there will be parts and maintenance there. And it seemed to me that there's an opportunity for some cost savings that could be propagated throughout the system in the future. And it's just a potential, but because it was so substantial, it seemed worth mentioning. And when I talked to the chief, there may be, I would have suggested, can you look into this before our next council meeting? And that might be kind of difficult, but since we're not in a big hurry, it's worth looking at over that period of time. So if our staff come back and say, yes, we still think this is going to be the best way to go, that's great. If it looks like there's actually is an opportunity, and they've heard from other fire stations that use this, that they're happy with it, we may find something that will turn out to be not only superior to what we've got in terms of handling it, but a cost savings for the taxpayers of London. So, I realize the difficulty that Councillor Squire has presented, and I wanted to give councillors a little more information about it. The clerks had some question about that, so my little note as a motion that may be coming up was the best I could do in the time we had. So I'll leave it to you. I just point out again that we're in a financial crisis, although a little less so thanks to the provincial government's announcement earlier today, but a financial crisis nonetheless, where I think we need to do just a little extra work to see if there's some opportunities for savings. Here was one. I brought it forth to the committee, so I think I've done my duty there. And it's maybe just a stroke of luck I encountered that one, but it was certainly an interesting conversation with the developers of that product. So that's all I have to say. I'll make that motion, or I have made that motion, that we defer this for one cycle, and my colleagues are welcome to second that motion or not.
Okay, so we have a motion to refer 2.1 for one committee cycle on the floor. We'll look for a seconder. Councillor Squire. So just in terms of my own comment on the motion to refer, I will say I always appreciate when councillors are coming forward with ideas to save money. One of my concerns, and I'm sure that Ms. Smith or Acting Chief Hayes, I'm not sure if you might be able to comment on this at all, but my question would be with regard to training. Obviously, if we have a single system across all of our fire halls, it simplifies the training process for our fire personnel. Do you have any, and I know this is coming out of the blue, so the answer might be no idea, but do you have any idea how many hours are spent ensuring our fire personnel are trained and up to speed on the use of these systems on an annual basis?
Through the chair, I'll ask Acting Chief Hayes to respond to the training aspect of it.
Thank you. Through the chair, what I would say is initially when these products are put into place, the personnel are trained how to use them as they would any new equipment. As new staff are brought into the fire service, then they are trained on the use of it. Ongoing training, unless there's significant changes, we would not do ongoing training. So initially, I would say probably an hour or so, depending on the type of product it is, but usually probably an hour in the case of an Edelman.
Great, thank you. Looking to see if any other colleagues have any other questions before we put the referral to a vote. Councillor Van Holst?
Sure, just one other point, and based on your good question, the training, of course, that's a question that the chief will be able to also get answered from the other fire departments that are using that. I'm sure that is a question that he would have asked, but that's good to realize that we can find out, is this a simple system to use? I was told it's even simpler than what we have now, although it's pretty straightforward. I think the system we've got is great. It's very interesting how it works, how quickly a very substantial vacuum starts pulling exhaust out of the building. And it has made a big difference. These are very important systems. They make a big difference. One of the captains was telling me how in the old days, if you will, before we had these, you could see that the walls and the ceiling were coated in soot because when a diesel engine is
So I hate to
fired up.
interrupt, Councillor Van Holst, but I think we're veering away from the discussion on the referral. I don't think there's any question as to the importance of the exhaust system's value.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, that was just an interesting point about these systems. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions or comments, we will put the referral to a vote. We'll just wait a moment for that to come up. Okay, we will start the roll call. Councillor Van Holst?
Yes.
Councillor Salee?
Yes.
Councillor Squire? Yes. And I also vote yes.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 4-0.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. That takes care of our consent agenda. We have no scheduled items. We have no items for direction. So the next matter we'll deal with is item 5, the deferred matters list. Look for somebody to put that on the floor. Councillor Squire, and seconded by Councillor Van Holst. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. Councillor Van Holst?
Yes.
Councillor Salee?
Yes.
Councillor Squire? Yes. And I also vote yes.
Closing the vote, the motion carries 4-0.
Thank you, colleagues. That concludes our public portion of the agenda. We do have 2 items for which we'll be going into confidential session. Just to let the public know, we have items that are related under 6.1 to personnel matters, matters pertaining to personnel matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, with respect to the awarding of the 2020 Queen Elizabeth scholarships. And 6.2 is going in camera under solicitor-client privilege and litigation, a matter pertaining to the advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege And this is in relation to the construction of the East Lyons Community Center. So I will look for a motion to go in camera. Moved by Councillor Squire, seconded by Councillor Van Holst. And we'll call the vote. And we're going to do a hand vote on this one. And that carries unanimously. Thank you. So for those who might be watching remotely, the YouTube and the city's eScribe stream will end. When we come back out of confidential session, we will restart the eScribe video, but the YouTube live stream will not be restarted when we report out from our in-camera session. And colleagues, we'll just ask you to be patient for a couple of minutes while we stop the streams and get the appropriate individuals in the room for the in-camera portion.